9 minutes. And we got 9 minutes. 9 minutes. It's debate night. Trump versus Cackling Harris. Oh, yeah. Hey. 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 So you think who's gonna win? Who you think gonna win? 4 minutes. They should be starting up here soon. 9 o'clock.
I mean, it's crazy to think about it. Like, it used to cost...
Kamala Harris. Dr. Bates.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both.
All right, here we go, y'all. It's going down.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. Tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy.
Man, come on now. Don't do that.
Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us
False.
the worst attack on our democracy
False.
since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a
What
bunch
playbook?
of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going
Tell
to
him,
read
Trump.
it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. I gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes.
Run.
She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have
That's
higher
not
prices
true
is
at all.
China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now.
They've been using
under
the
their
same tariffs
administration.
since
We are going to
Trump
take in
left office.
billions of dollars,
They never stopped
hundreds
them.
of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our
True.
country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible
China.
for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
China
President Trump,
virus.
I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore
That's
because
right.
of
True.
philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3
She
years
just
ago
put 'em out
and 4 years
yesterday.
ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country.
She laughed at
She's a
everything.
Marxist.
This ain't no
Everybody knows she's a
laughing
Marxist.
situation.
Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to
we
kill
going to
Roe v.
abortion.
Wade.
Kill
Last
the
year, you said that you were
babies.
proud to be the
Kill the
most pro-life president in American
babies.
history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida,
for
you
women.
surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore,
It's
why should
to
they
the
trust you?
So the reason
states.
I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor
They'll
of
rip
West
'em out
Virginia,
at the
the
end.
previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates.
Finish him.
Because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for
He took it to the
52
states.
years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government.
It's
I did
for
a
the
great service in doing it.
people.
It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Wait a
Vice President, I want to get your
minute.
response
You don't
to
even
the
know what you're
presidential
talking
Well,
about.
as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's
not true.
actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women
Ain't your body
around our country.
if you have a baby
you
inside
want to talk
you.
about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest
Come on
being
now.
forced to
Don't
carry
do
a
that.
pregnancy to term. They don't want
He
that.
just said that he's not
And
going
I pledge
to
you,
tell people
when
to.
Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice
It
President
isn't.
Harris.
Well, there
It's
she goes
by the
again.
people.
It's a
It's
lie.
by the
I'm not
people.
signing a ban, and there's no reason to
What?
sign a ban because
We
we've
vote on
gotten
this.
What everybody wanted, Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting, and it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the
He's
abortion
evil,
ban,
man.
no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
No.
Well, we have to because,
It is-
again,
it's the
as soon as-
states.
Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and
That's
it
right.
ended up being a total catastrophe.
That's right.
The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea.
Get 'em.
And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans.
Get
They
'em.
didn't get it for free. But
Get
they were
'em.
saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate,
What
J.D.
the
Vance,
heck?
has said
No,
that you
he's
would
not- he
veto
can't do
if
it.
did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments.
Man, she ain't
What
been
is
to the hood
happening
for
in our
sure.
country?
It's
Working
girls out
people,
here
working
that
women
use abortion
who are working
just
one or
because
two jobs,
they got
who can
pregnant and
barely
they don't want
afford
to
childcare
go through
as
it.
it is,
It
have to
wasn't thinking
travel
about
to
what they
another
doing.
state, to get on a
They're
plane sitting next to strangers,
destroying
to go
children
and get
of
the
America.
healthcare she needs, barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through
through.
is unconscionable.
What-
And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
Why didn't they turn off her mic?
Why don't you ask her that
Why
question?
don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question, would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question,
you
would you
could
veto?
you could do
See what I'm
abortions
saying?
in the 7th month, the 8th
Trifling.
month,
They
the
never
9th
do
month,
that for
and
Republicans.
probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor
She
of
gets to
Virginia
interrupt,
said we put
do
the
whatever
baby
she wanna
aside,
do.
and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
That wasn't going to fix the problem.
And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the
you've
course
been
of
there.
his rallies,
Like,
he talks
man,
about
this
fictional
is
characters
out
like Hannibal
of-
Lecter.
What?
We'll talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will
Out
also
of
notice
context.
is that people start leaving his
of
rallies
context.
early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you
This is
deserve
crazy.
a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you
That's
that I will.
what America
President Harris,
first.
Thank you. President Trump, on that
What?
point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people.
He's not lying
that
at
live
all.
there.
He's not
And
lying.
This is what's happening in our country.
It's sad
and
as
it's a
hell that
shame.
people think
As
that this
far
is a
as
joke.
Rallies are concerned.
He wouldn't
as
just
far as
bring up that
the
stuff.
reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase: make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
Lie.
people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But
television.
the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
Yeah,
I'll let you
man.
respond
These
to the
these
rest of the
guys,
paper.
man, are whack, dog.
Talk about extreme.
Go ahead, laugh about this, because everything
You
is
know,
funny. Nothing
I think
is
one of the
serious.
reasons why in this election,
Nothing is
I
serious.
actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans
What?
who have formerly worked with
Oh,
President
200,
Bush,
that's
Mitt
it.
Romney,
Take 'em.
and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney
Dick
and
Cheney!
Congressmember
Oh.
Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a
That's
different
so
kind of
nice
person.
of
I
the
fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did
CNN.
bad things or a bad job.
I mean, what
fired
is
them.
this?
They never fired one
C-SPAN?
person. They didn't fire anybody having to do
No,
with
this ABC.
Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it. Because
he said he's going to do it with local police
of our country by what they've done.
He didn't.
There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the
He
fabric
didn't explain
of our country.
exactly how he's
Millions of
going to do
people
it.
Let in, and all over the world.
And he's probably not,
crime is down all over
because
the world except
that's
here.
not going to work.
Crime here is up and through the roof.
He's not
Despite
going to
their
be able to
fraudulent
tell you how
statements
he's
that
going
they
to do
made.
it. He's just
Crime
going
in
to do
this
it.
country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
They crazy as hell,
the
man.
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been
Go ahead, laugh
prosecuted
about it. Laugh about our
for
country and how we
national
doing.
security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable.
We ain't talking
for
about electric
sexual
interference.
assault, and his next big
Sexual
court
assault.
appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Well, they ain't got
And
nothing to
let's
do
be
with
clear,
nothing.
Where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about
do
what
with
is
anything, man. We
important
don't
in
give a
this
fuck.
race. It is important that we move forward, that we
Anybody
turn
who
the
gonna vote for
page
Trump, we vote
on
for him
this
if he was in
same
prison.
old tired rhetoric and address
No, it ain't
the needs
no
of the
old
American
tired
people.
rhetoric
Address
either.
what we need to
What-
do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan
Nah.
for. Address what we must do to support our small
give 'em all the
businesses.
migrants?
Address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
We exhausted with
Harris,
you.
thank you.
Excuse me.
That's what we
Every one of
exhausted
those
with.
cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
thank you.
Hold up, you didn't even stop shit.
Harris,
You've been the
in your
vice
last run for
president. You've been the vice
This is the
president.
one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy.
Get
I'm
'em.
a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump,
Russia investigation.
We do have a lot.
Get
to
'em.
Nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice
Man,
President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact,
They
I
already
was the
banned
tie-breaking
fracking.
vote on the Inflation Reduction
right now we
Act,
are not fracking
which
as much
opened
as we
new
used to.
leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother.
We could care less
who
about that.
worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
We could care less about
the
that.
values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed
We can care less about
$400
that.
million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times.
We can care less about that.
Is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes.
You went to school in
increase by
Canada.
3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a
You
friend
got
when I
everything
was in
you
high school
got
who was sexually
by
assaulted by her
getting down.
stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable.
You
My
got
work
dudes out
that
of
is about
prison
protecting Social
after
Security
the
and
George
Medicare
Floyd riots.
is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My
What?
values have not changed. And what is
Oh, yeah.
important is
We
that
know
there is
your
a
values
president
ain't
who
changed.
actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not
If you want
beating
her
people
values,
down.
you're going to stay in
And
the same
name-calling.
position that we're in
The
right
true
now.
measure of the leader
If you want to go
is the
back
leader
and
who
go to the
actually
time where
understands
we had
the
more
strength
money,
is not in beating people
lower
down,
gas
it's in lifting
prices,
people up.
lower prices
I
on
intend to be
groceries,
that president.
then vote for Trump.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years.
Get
Defund
'em.
the police, she's been against that forever.
Get 'em.
She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
She went out
What?
in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went
I
out and
tried
raised
to tell
money to
you.
get them out of jail. She did things that
Yep.
nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow
Take your
fracking
guns.
in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the
She's
oil
shaking her
business
head,
going
but
like
she
nobody
knows
has
it's
ever done
already
before.
done right now. They're trying to
when
turn
they
it back
took
on.
over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically.
Get 'em.
And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer.
Get 'em.
He should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates
And
are
they
down all
eating your
over the world
dogs.
because of it.
But let me
They
just-
when are
going
those-
into the
when are
parks,
those
grabbing
people gonna
up
be prosecuted?
gooses,
When are the people that burned down Minneapolis
breaking their
gonna be
neck and
prosecuted?
taking them home?
Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to
Why
make a
would he
speech.
regret
I
anything
showed up
he
for a
did?
speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond.
He doesn't see anything he did was
I
wrong.
was at the Capitol on January 6th.
No, you weren't. No, you
I
weren't.
was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there.
No, you weren't. You were in
And
a
on
place
that
where a
day,
bomb was right
the
next to
President
your
of the
damn
United
building.
States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital.
No,
On that day,
please.
140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
Nobody died
understand.
on the grounds. A
Former
lie.
president has been
Lie.
indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate.
What's the man, dog?
And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
It's no,
Let's
man.
remember
Man, come
that
on. That's
when
so
it came to the
old.
Proud Boys,
Everybody
the
knows
militia,
this stuff, man.
The president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
Man, come
So for
on,
everyone
man.
watching
This
who
for real.
remembers what
That's
January
that's
6th was. I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you.
What?
To stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to
What?
stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath.
Donald Trump, the
If
president.
this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking, let's turn the page on this. Let's
What
not go
the
back.
heck is
Let's
going
chart
on?
a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
See how they
was
turn
a
off his
different
mic?
term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham,
Get 'em.
Sean Hannity,
Get
Jesse,
'em.
all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they
Get
still
'em.
bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up.
We're
They
going to
bring
get to all
this
that
stuff up.
after this
I
is
ask
over
you
with.
this, you
I'm
talk
going to
about the
debunk
Capitol.
all this crap.
Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills.
Get 'em.
They have the right to do it. The President of the United
He
States,
did
you'll
it.
get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on
He
down
did
to
it.
the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President.
people are killing many
He's
people,
telling the
unlike
truth.
J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate,
He
you
did.
have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that.
You
I
already
said,
know
we
what
lost
it
by a
is. He ain't
whisker.
never
That
gonna
was said
say he lost.
sarcastically. Look, There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it.
You got
They
to.
should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote.
They were about to start
they
up,
can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically.
giving
And
out
these
ballots
people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why
before
they're
the debate.
allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where
Why is it that every time Trump debates somebody,
the President of the United States
the
doesn't have
actual
standing?
moderators are
That's how
debating
we
him?
lost. If you look at the
It's-
facts,
it's-
and I'd
it's-
love to
it's
have you
insane,
do a
man.
special on it.
We
I'll show
are
you
listening to what
Georgia,
she's
and I'll
gonna
show
say,
you
not
Wisconsin,
what
and
the
I'll
deb-
show you Pennsylvania.
Man,
and I'll show
dude.
you, we have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a
Nah,
very
that ain't,
difficult
man,
time
she's crazy.
processing that.
And she got an earpiece
But
in her
we
ear.
cannot afford to have a
That little
president
hair
of
on the left
United
side,
States who
right up here.
attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you
That
that
shit's stupid,
I
dude.
have traveled the world as vice
My
president
fault.
of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office.
They don't have a democracy
And you know what?
anymore.
I'll give you a little secret.
And they're the
He
ones
hates
that
her.
promote
He can't
democracy.
stand her. But
Mr.
he got
President.
14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans
Tell
among
the
them.
truth.
Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how. Saying
worst.
international humanitarian
What kind of
law
shoulder
must be
pads does she
respected.
got on?
Israel must do more to protect innocent
Like
civilians.
demon shoulder
You said
pads.
that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain.
That's the
Just last
mediator.
week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7,
How did we get here?
Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own
You ain't
way,
lying.
she hates the Arab population because the
ain't
whole
lying.
place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's
Yes, I am.
absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people.
And my
He knows
husband
that
is
he's trying to again divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known
he's from
that
Israel, I
Donald
guess.
Trump is weak and wrong on national
Weak.
security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one,
admires
according to
dictators.
himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and
That's
go
what
into
he said.
Ukraine.
Okay, we got that
It is well
on.
known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant.
He said it was
is well known
brilliant.
he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
And he has
And it
love
is
letters with Kim
absolutely well
Jong-un.
known
And all
that
this
these
is
dictators
straight up
and
facts.
autocrats are rooting
Straight facts.
for you
You
to
know,
be
Trump, he
president
do
again
that.
because
You
they're
know what I'm
so
saying?
clear.
You know this
They
shit's
can
lies.
manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why
Does she need some water
so
or something?
many military leaders
She been
who
drinking
you have
a lot.
worked with have told me you are a disgrace.
Smacking and shit.
That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible.
He did,
It wouldn't have
actually. I
happened
see
with
that.
me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate
Shazam.
from the National
Oh,
Constitution
man.
Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
It's hot and fiery up in here. I'll tell you that much.
The ABC
Kamala
News
Harris
presidential debate will
took a
continue
couple of
after
different
this.
playbook displays. It's interesting here. I could see how this can get misconstrued and pushed into a different type of way. I don't know. Hot fire. Ooh, let's see here. I don't know. I think that everything that's been going on with presidential election for the 2000 till now, I was living good. I'm always going to live good regardless, because I'm not going to lose. But one of the biggest things that I seen that was a dumb mistake that I feel that happened was they ended up like messing up the gas, and that makes it hard for shipment to get in for groceries and all different types of stuff. And it's just so much different perspective of how you just opened the border up. There was no problem with any migrants just flooding. And they know they did this. They're going to act like we don't know that. Like, this is straight fact. The Biden and Harris, like, a little positive shit, they went down and tore up everything that has to do with illegal immigration. They just started flooding it. They got people's planes flying in, dropping them off in Canada. And that's another thing. Most people don't even know that Canada is actually letting them in too. You know, it's going to be in your back door and in your front door. And if you got a side door on the left and the right, they're going to come in any way they can into your home and put themselves in place of you. And that's what's happening. Like, literally, you hear all the stories about people getting their apartments taken away. They have to move out of their neighborhood. There's people, and that whole little thing. I'm gonna find that real quick. I know that this is not no joke. With let me find that. Well, we got a break. Just was on that. Oops. Who can I go to immediately? I know the liberal hive mind probably has got some animals. And who did I see that this morning? Huh. I don't know. I can't. Trying to think because I'm on my other channel. Black. Here we go. Let's see here. Here we go. I want to ask you a question, y'all. So this is fake.
Literally, and last night, after living in this home for 45 years, he said, Noelle, guess what? It's time to pack up and move. He said, we can't do this anymore. He said, it's killing both of us mentally. I don't understand what you expect of us as citizens. I mean, I understand they're here under temporary protected status and you're protecting them. And I understand that our city services are overwhelmed and understaffed. But who's protecting us? If we're protecting them, who's protecting me? I want out of this town. I am sorry. Please give me a reason to stay.
You guys are just sitting up there in suits. Like, I really challenge you guys to get out here and do something. These Haitians are running into trash cans.
I'm angry that my friends and family are packing up and moving away. I'm angry that foreigners are using up the resources that were set up for the Americans that reside here. I'm angry that another country's flag was being flown in our city. I'm angry.
Look, man, I'm telling you, there's people that are literally walking out and having animals outside. It's crazy.
My husband is elderly, and last night, after living in this home for 45 years, he said, Noelle, guess what?
We got to
It's time
go.
to pack up and move.
Yeah.
He said, we can't do this anymore. He said, it's killing both of us mentally.
All right, let's get back to the debate.
What you
I don't want
expect of us as
to
citizens.
be
I mean,
delayed.
I understand
But after
they're here
this,
under
I'll show
temporary
you. Let's get back to the debate.
Back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being
Is Kamala Harris going to end the war?
Being killed by the millions. It's the millions.
Is Kamala
It's
Harris
so
going to
much
end the
worse
war?
than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing
he's supposed
done
to ask
than we
opposite
are.
questions.
They're in for 150 billion.
He's supposed to just say, is Kamala Harris going to end the war?
To ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason?
What's up with her neck?
He hasn't
It
even
looked like
made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody.
She
They don't
getting
even
old.
try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Tell him.
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against
Wait a minute,
Joe
no,
Biden,
wait.
you're running against me.
You
I believe
are.
The reason that Donald Trump says
this nigga
that
just
the war
laughed
would be
too.
over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky
Everything's so funny.
a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition,
There's
the
a war.
artillery, the javelins,
There's a war.
the Abrams tanks
There's
that
a
we have
war.
provided,
There's a
Ukraine
war.
stands as an independent
There's a
and
war.
free country. If
There's a
Donald Trump
war.
were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator.
Why is she
who will eat
whining,
you
man?
for
See, we
lunch.
can't have no
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've
woman
heard from both of you on Ukraine
whining,
tonight.
man.
Afghanistan came up in the last
Not
hour.
going down,
I
man.
wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war. Because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the
Why you gonna bring a woman
They
to
sent her in
negotiate a war
with
anyways?
Zelensky and Putin. And she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
Don't come, migrant.
Trump, thank you. You did bring
Please,
up something.
don't
You
come.
said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing
Why
as
didn't you
America
go
always
to
should,
Putin?
as a leader upholding international rules and norms.
Why
As a
didn't you
leader
go
who
to
shows
Putin?
Strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations.
They weren't even
both
paying
on trade
nothing.
and on NATO.
They just wanted our
I
backup.
got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive
I know all my
respected
politics
world
that I
leaders.
know. I ain't never heard
And
of this. So this is weird.
Former president, as president, invited them
He
to
is
Camp
the
David
president.
because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good,
I think he gave him a picture of his house. Let him know that if you do anything to any soldiers,
we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it.
No soldiers died. No soldiers died.
This, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
Wait a minute. Let me see her birth certificate. Let me see if she says it says African American on it.
Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your
He ain't doing that.
I don't care what she is.
He don't care.
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
Yeah.
Those were your words. So I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out. And
what are
I'll
you?
say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a
Shazam!
tragedy that we have.
What? Wait a minute. What are you?
Wants to be president who has consistently over the course
No.
of
Let's get to the point.
attempted to use race to divide the
What
American
are
people.
you? Are you black
I do
or are
believe
you
that the
Indian?
vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because
Wait a minute, hold up.
property to black families.
What?
Let's remember, this is
Mom.
the same individual who
This is
took out
out
a
cold,
full-page ad in the
dude.
New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park
They're not
Five.
innocent. They're not innocent. They're
Took
not
out a
innocent.
full-page ad calling for
They're
their
not
execution.
innocent.
This is
Like,
the same individual
hot
who
fire.
spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
Man, oh man.
And I think the American people want better than that. Want better than this.
Dude.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American
This is
people?
like word salad,
Knowing
dog.
that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we
Are
all
you black or
have the
are
same
you
dreams and
are you
aspirations and want a
Indian,
president
Asian?
who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Are you black or are you Indian or Asian?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country.
Insane.
There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back
we don't
many,
even know
many
what she
years,
said.
when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty.
That's right.
And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I
We
built
can
one
go
of the
back in
greatest
time.
economies in the history of
Willie
the world,
Brown.
and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Man, all he got to do is just ask her, is she black or is she Asian?
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump.
You are
And what
a
I
part
do
of
offer
the
is a
actual.
new generation of leadership
Man.
for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always
Are you
disparaging the
black?
American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk
Strengthen.
about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan.
I have a
To give
plan.
startup businesses
What is it?
$50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their
We don't need to
ideas,
hear all
their
that. We
hard
want to
work.
know if
I
you
have
black
a
or are
plan,
you actually Indian.
$6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people
This
to be
question
able to
was
pursue
shouldn't even
what
been
has been
in
fleeting
the
in terms
debate.
of the American dream.
This
by
was a stupid
offering
question.
help with down payment
'Cause
of
now they're just letting
$25,000
her
down payment
just
assistance
talk.
for first-time home
This
buyers.
is retarded.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to
What?
policy.
What do you mean? You talking about going forward and you just brought back the.
To defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
Nah,
fracking in
man, let him
Pennsylvania
talk.
or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president
Fuck
has
nah.
said something
Sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
Fuck
we're
nah,
gonna
fuck
respond.
nah,
President
fuck
Trump,
nah, fuck
this
nah.
is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep
'Cause
Obamacare, quote, unless we
it
can do
doesn't even
something
matter.
much better. Last month you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something. I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system.
See,
2
this
years
is the
later,
thing.
you
They didn't
proposed a
ask
plan
her,
that
why is
included
she
a
doing
private
anything about it
insurance
right
option.
now?
What is your
Or
plan
asking
today?
Well, first
Biden
of all,
to
I
do that.
absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about
We
this
got to
stuff.
find out if she got a
As it
gun in her
relates to the
name.
Affordable
That's,
Care Act,
that's going to be a
understand,
lie,
just
guaranteed.
look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year.
See, she takes on
when
all
I am
the stuff that
president,
she thinks
we will
is
do that
good,
for all
but
people,
she won't take on
understanding
anything that's
that
bad.
The value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Past its
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made
of
a
Why is-
mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money.
Hey, let
They
her
wanna have
talk,
private.
man.
She
This
wants
is why-
everybody to be on government insurance.
even
where you
did this
wait
debate.
6 months for an operation.
Shouldn't even
that
did
you
this
need
debate.
immediately.
President Trump, thank you.
They shouldn't
We have
even did
another
this
issue that
debate.
we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real.
What-
You ask anyone who lives in a state who has
Is it climate
experienced
change?
these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the
What kind of
victim
climate are
what
you
that
talking about?
means in
The
terms of
position that
losing
you're
their
in?
home, having
Or are you
nowhere
talking
to
about the
go.
weather?
We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also
And we still
increased domestic
over here
gas
hurting.
production to
We have
historic levels.
high gas
we
prices,
have created over
high
800,000 new manufacturing jobs
food
while I
prices.
have been vice president. We have
Storms
invested in
are going
clean
crazy.
energy to the point that we are opening
Tornadoes
up
tearing up
factories around
places.
the world. Donald Trump said
got
he was going to create
trains
manufacturing
that are
jobs. He lost
crashing.
manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes
Oh my God.
growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President
They're
Trump,
evil.
thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night as ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia.
Man, they're wild out with this one. I think now, honestly, he should have just gone ahead and let them not even do this debate, dude, because this is not even a debate. They're just putting on everything they can to try to create Trump to be the worst. And it's not cool, man. I'm about to go back to it here in a second. I just was going to try to go back to what I was at. No. What was I just last at? What did I last look at? No. History. Man. Okay. Let me thank you guys. Sorry about that. Hope you guys are enjoying yourself. Hope you subscribe and like the video. This is my first time actually doing this, so don't be mad at me if it's not the sweetest. I'm gonna get better. No, that's not it. Oh my God, I dig it. Do 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 do. All right, this will work out for sure. Let's see here. Do 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 do. Let's look up what was my last stuff that I did. Actually,
Hey Meta, take a photo. Jesus can't save these hoes, why are you trying? What make you think you greater than Jesus, nigga? If Jesus can't save these hoes, why are you trying? Why are you trying, nigga? If Jesus can't save these hoes, why are you trying? Why are you trying? What make you think you greater than Jesus, nigga? What make you think you greater than Jesus? What make you think you greater than Jesus, nigga? What make you think you greater than Jesus? What make you think you greater than Jesus? Swing the weed makes God. Can't save these hoes. Can't save these hoes. Can't save these hoes, nigga. Can't save these hoes. Can't save these hoes. Can't save these
my
hoes,
shit.
nigga. Can't save these hoes. 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 Can't save these hoes, nigga. If Jesus can't save these hoes, why are you trying? Why are you trying? If Jesus can't save these hoes, why are you trying? Why are you trying? What make you think you greater than Jesus?
What make you think you greater than Jesus?
What make you
Hey, welcome back to the Streaming Masterclass. This is episode number...
But at the same time, dog, it's I got it for you guys though. I gotta go through my page. I'm on a totally different page because this is my streaming page, so I don't have the nitty gritty stuff on my page. But hey, it'll be coming up soon. I'll be able to prove it to you. It's not like I'm just crazy or something, or I think that greater than Jesus. Tell you that much. Here we go. Let's get back to it.
Come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked
That is
a
true.
victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
She never worked for
The only thing
nobody
I
other
ever asked
than
them, are
the
you
government.
okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
They jumped
So
Trump.
she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for
Get 'em.
3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the
Get
things
'em.
we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together,
Get
do
'em.
the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and
You
you
haven't
won't do
done
it.
it.
because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on.
We got wars going on in the United States.
We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
The worst.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
And that concludes the ABC presidential debate.
I guess that's it, everybody.
Continues here tonight with viewer reaction and reaction on the ground from
just
the
let you know,
supporters.
this is my first episode
Reporters swarming
on my show.
there in the spin room. Let's go down into
I
the
want
spin
you to
room
go
at
ahead
the
and know
Philadelphia
that
Convention Center
everything
and listen.
that I'm doing right now
in the right direction, showing up in the right parts of our state in order to make the case.
something that I'm trying to work on for the future. And thank you if you did come and watch. Tomorrow.
Are you looking for more in this world?
Sorry about
the
that.
door is opening for you.
Sorry about that. Tomorrow I'll be on, and I'm going to go better. I'm going to go on and get better and better and better. Kind of nervous and stuff, but hey, you got to start. But thank you. Hope you guys got the information that you wanted to get. And I'm not trying to say that Kamala Harris isn't the right person, but she's not the right person for me. Shazam. Just to let you know, don't forget to subscribe, like, and add me into your notifications. That boy is good. Enjoy your night.